Overeating is overeating. If you overeat any of the macronutrients, you're going to gain weight. I've said that since the beginning of my channel. But how do you know if you're overeating? Or how do you know if you're undereating? Those two questions set me on a path to the egg challenge that I ended up doing. And I want to talk about that with you today. This all started because I went on vacation and overate every day, 7 days, overate. I had a normal supper every evening, as normal as I could have at a resort, which is why I decided that in the morning when we got up, at some point when we had brunch, I would actually eat because, first of all, the meats there were lean, and second of all, the serving sizes were small-ish. But when you look at it, the combination of the supper that I was having and the brunch that I was having, because I was having eggs and sausage and bacon and whatever was available, chicken and pork chops and whatever they had for breakfast, I was eating that too. I ate more than I would have normally eaten in a day. I haven't had 2 full meals a day in like more than 2, maybe even 3, 4 years. I was certain I was going to come home and have gained weight. That didn't happen. As a matter of fact, what ended up happening was I came home, stepped on the scale, and to my surprise, lost 5 pounds. That didn't actually make sense to me because I know I overate. But I started to rationalize things in my head with the idea that, well, it was hot and I was walking to the beach and the pool every day. And then I was swimming and fooling around in the water every day. And so maybe could I have used more energy? Maybe could I have sweated a lot more? And somehow I lost water weight, maybe, or I don't know. I made all kinds of ideas in my head, but I was sure that by the end of a month or so, I'd be back to my normal weight because that's what always happens. I fast and then I put the weight back on easily. And so I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to go for it and I'm going to put the weight back on. But that didn't happen. I kept losing. Not a lot, slowly, but after a few months, I stepped on the scale again. I'm like, wow, it feels like I'd lost another 2 or 3 pounds. And I'm like, okay, that's weird because I was kind of expecting to go in the other direction. And then a little bit later, I stepped on the scale again and it was still down. And so now instead of being just 5 pounds down, I'm 7 pounds down and not liking that. After about 5 years of doing keto, I've figured out that at the very beginning of my journey, I made a huge mistake. And it's a huge mistake that I've even spoken about and told people. So I've advised this way of doing keto. I'm going to correct the mistake. And I want you to see how doing this egg challenge helped me to figure out the ridiculous mistake I made at the very beginning of my journey. So this was probably the perfect storm. I returned from vacation, my weight is down, and then I see this video. And I'm intrigued, right? Eat more and lose weight. In one of my interviews, I was talking to Rose. You can check out that video. I can link it below. And she was talking about how much food she eats. And I don't like talking about calories, but she said in the video that she eats 3,000 calories a day, which when I look at my numbers, my biggest meals touch 2,000. Right? And I was just like, how is she eating 3,000 calories a day? Now, she's taller than me, so that's part of the story. But again, with everything that had happened to me since returning from my vacation, I started to wonder if maybe there was something to her eating so much more than me. Again, perfect storm, right? Is it possible that I'm not eating enough? And by eating a bit more, my body kind of kicked into action and now I'm back to eating normally and my weight is now coming down. So basically that I should be eating more to maintain my weight now because something happened when I ramped it up a few weeks ago, months ago now by this point. I needed to figure this out. So this is what I decided to do. I said, let me just do a little experiment. I'm going to eat more for a month and see what happens. And now the question became, what am I going to eat? How am I going to eat more? I'm not the kind of person who will ever add carbohydrate back to my diet in order to gain weight because I'm never going to do anything that harms my health ever again. So I need to figure out what could I possibly do. And I had an interview with Lee another person that I interviewed for the channel, and he talked about the amazing health benefits of eggs and the fact that eggs can help us to heal our body. And given the fact that being like 5.5 years into my keto journey and knowing it takes about 15-ish years to rebuild a body, I know I still have a lot of internal damage and some, lots of things that need to be repaired on me. So I thought eating eggs was a great place to start because it's going to help my body to heal, which is, a double bonus for this experiment that I'm going to do. Now, another thing I wanted to do was I wanted to make sure that there wouldn't be another explanation to what happens to my health and my weight. So I decided I'm going to keep what I'm eating exactly the same. I have, 4 or 5 meals that I eat on rotation, and I'm going to make sure that I eat exactly the normal meals that I would always eat. And I would just add 4 eggs on top of that. And then we'll see how my health improves. I was pretty sure that I could easily eat 2 extra eggs a day. That's why I decided to make it 4. Because I needed to make this a challenge, right? I needed to, quote unquote, overeat the way that I felt that I overate on vacation, and then see what would happen. So now I want to read you some stuff that I took note of so that I can get it right. So for the last 30 days, I've been overeating 4 eggs every day. And so what that means for my diet, again, just using calories so you can understand what's happening here. My latest meal, if you do the calorie count, is 1,889 calories. And that, with the 4 extra eggs per day, became 2,254 calories. My largest meal that I eat at home was 2,246 calories, and with the 4 extra eggs becomes 2,652. Now, Pat and I go out to eat every other week. And when we go out to eat, that meal is very close to the size of my largest meal with the 4 eggs added, right? So somewhere around 2,600 calories, give or plus or minus 15. And on that same weekend, we tend to have a big salad to round out that fun meal weekend. And that meal also, when you add the salad dressing and the meat and everything, comes out to about 2,600 some odd calories. So that means that on that particular day, when I have those 2 bigger meals, I was already max for what I can eat. So I didn't force myself on those 2 date nights that Pat and I have to eat. And those 2 date nights are happening in the same weekend. So that weekend, I didn't force myself to overeat by 4 extra eggs. So there were 4 days out of the 30 where I didn't have the 4 extra eggs. Now that we've gone through what I did, let's look at the results. 7 days into the challenge, I had a hard time eating everything that I was supposed to eat because I was overeating. And so it took me a good 3-4 days to get used to eating what I needed to eat. But once I got used to it, everything went fine. So as you can see, after a week, I'm still stable. And that totally makes sense to me. Despite all the memes that you see of someone smelling chocolate and gaining weight, that doesn't actually happen in real life. So I wasn't really expecting my weight to change after 1 week. So let's take a look at what happened on the second week. Week number 2 was harder. I was hungry. Surprisingly, I got really hungry, and I found myself in the evenings like really wanting to get home, make supper, and to eat. That was surprising. My body really seemed to want more food. I'd been eating the same way for so long that shocked me. One thing that I noticed by doing this challenge is that I was still walking around with this idea that in order to be healthy, eating less was part of that story. So when my body was hungry and seeking more food, there was a mindset shift that I needed to do. And it was no longer just about, I hope I put back on the 5 pounds. It was, is it possible that I was actually undereating and didn't realize? Because I have this idea in my head that eating less is healthier. And even though like if you would have asked me before I did this challenge, if I was eating enough, like I was eating a good amount of food. Like you heard the numbers that I read. I was eating a good amount of food. And still, when I started to eat more, my body was asking for more. One of the things that feeling hungrier got me thinking about was Dr. Fung's idea that when we eat more, our body uses more energy. And when we eat less, our body uses less energy. I started to wonder if by eating more, my body was ramping up some kind of processes that it was doing, maybe. And I was wondering if maybe, well, what would happen in terms of my energy, etc. So by that point, I still didn't know the answer to that question. So for context, Wellness Warrior, I want to point out that I was a little low in my numbers. And I'm actually forgetting to include, first of all, the eggs that I added. Instead of them being eggs as an ingredient, they were actually fried eggs. And so when you fry eggs, instead of it being 310 calories I would need to add, it was actually 405 calories. And then if you scramble them, it's actually 420 calories. So my numbers are low by about 100. So the highest meal was actually around 2,750-ish calories. And on the lower end, it would have been 2,400 calories on the lower end. I didn't calculate that correctly because I was just putting it as eggs as an ingredient. Now, another mistake that I realized I made is all of my meals were fried, which means that even those numbers that I'm showing of chicken and pork and whatever, the meals I'm making, I just calculated based on eating the meat and not realizing that if it's a fried meal, it's different than a not fried meal. So again, you have to add a bit more for the oil that gets into the meat. So the lard and butter that I fry in, getting into the meat. I'm not able to be that minute in the numbers is the point I'm making. I think that my calorie numbers are probably much higher than the numbers that we're talking about. The fact that I was hungrier, I'm super interested to know how this is going to impact my energy moving forward. But again, these are works in progress. I'm learning as you're learning. So the next week, let's look at that. During week 3, some more interesting things happened. I was full. And I had 2 days in that week, they're back-to-back days, where I really felt like if maybe I wasn't hungry enough to eat. But then by the time supper time came around, I was hungry, so I made my meal. But on the 3rd day, supper time came around and it passed and I was not hungry and I ended up not eating that day. So it was an unplanned fast. And then that was a Friday actually. And then Saturday came along and I ate normally. And normally meaning I had my meal plus 4 eggs. And I just kept going forward like that afterwards. One thing that I did notice that was different, and it started around week 3, was that I started to feel like good energy in the morning. And so I hadn't really noticed that I didn't have good energy per se, but I do know that I'm a snoozer. My alarm goes off and I want to snooze. And all of a sudden, I was waking up. Like the alarm would go off and I was awake, and I started to wake up a little bit before the alarm, which the first few times were kind of annoying, but eventually it just became a thing that I was waking before the alarm. So my energy was good. And even I've had a few days where I only got 6 hours of sleep because of work or because of getting videos up or whatever. But the next day I'm still able to get up. So that's new. I used to be the kind of person that if I was going to start work a little later, for example, I would set an alarm because I was afraid I would sleep and just not wake up in time to go to work, even though I was waking up later. Now I'm waking up about the same time every morning, whether I work later or not, which is new. It's interestingly new. So I feel like I'm having more energy. So at first I was wondering if I hadn't had the fasting day, would my weight have gone up? But now that we're a few weeks later, I know the answer to that. And the answer is, today's video is brought to you by my keto consultations. You know how to do keto, but you're having trouble just sticking with it? Book a consultation with me and we're going to get you back on track. The link is in the description. And the answer is, nope, it's stayed stable. And actually, I'm going to do week number 4 sitting here in front of you and let you know that, yeah, my weight has stayed stable. I want to say that Pat tried to tell me about 2 weeks into this process. He was like, I don't know if you're noticing this, but your skin, it looks like tighter to me. And I'm like, no, you're crazy. You know, I'm doing something and you think that there's something happening. But to me, I look at myself and I'm fine. And then, you know, hindsight being 2020, when we look at ourselves in the mirror every day, we can't see what's happening because we look at ourselves every day. Since Pat doesn't look at me like that every day, then when he does see me, it's like, oh, your arms. And so my arms are actually tighter, Wellness Warrior, and other parts of me are tighter that I do look at, and I was like, you know what? He's right. My skin seems tighter, and it's not because I gained weight, because I haven't gained any weight. Another thing that I will point out is I'm feeling well rested. Now, I've been ill recently, and what's really kind of cool is that despite the fact that I was ill, so I had, you know, all the cold symptoms, I still had energy. And I didn't feel like I needed to be in bed all the time. And well, I just know myself. And that's like, I'm the kind of person that when I'm not feeling well, you know, I want to sit and cozy and watch TV and whatever. But no, I was still doing things and moving around and just living my normal day. And I found that really interesting. I was even able to film on days that I thought I wouldn't film. And I'm like, you know what? I have the energy. I'm going to film. So despite having a little bit of a nasally thing, which if you're listening, you probably can still hear it a little bit, I have had energy. Now, is this some kind of placebo effect of overeating the 4 eggs every day? And we're going to find out, right? But for right now, what I'm seeing is I have energy. But here's the bad news. After a month of overeating 4 eggs every single day, I found a flaw in the way that I started my keto journey. And you might be making the same flaw. Well, first of all, especially if you watch one of my videos on how to start, you're making the flaw because I talked about it. But you're especially making this flaw if you're doing this for weight loss reasons. When I started my keto journey, I used a protein calculator, so a macro calculator. That set me up with 2 critical errors that we are going to need to correct. And the egg experiment helped me to see those errors. Those calculators that we use to calculate how much protein we should be eating are based on minimum dietary requirements.
But I have a big problem with the amino acid scores because they're incredibly low. They're way too low. They're established by the World Health Organization, by the FAO, which is really designed to prevent malnutrition in Africa, where we know from our Institute of Medicine that the essential amino acid scores are much higher than that, should be. You mentioned stable isotopes a little bit ago, or tracers. We know from stable isotope studies that all those FAO amino acid scores are too low. And so that's part of the equation that we're not telling people either.
So Dr. Lehman is helping us to understand that we keep focusing on the minimum requirements rather than getting the amount that our body would be able to use to improve us, to build us to the best of its ability, which then means you're not trying to get the minimum. You might even be trying to go overboard. You might trying to get more than the minimum, but still not overeating to gain weight, right? And so I feel like my scenario on vacation pushed me to the point where, because everything I was eating was the healthiest I could get, I was eating eggs, I was eating bacon, I was eating sausages, I was eating all the meats that they were making that weren't tasting sweet to me. And then for supper, I was doing the same thing. I was doing meats and I was just leaving the vegetables away. Because I was so focused on only eating what was healthiest, I ended up giving my body so much healthy protein, it started to do good things. And part of those good things, I think, is this path that it had me on at the very beginning of keto when I first started, of trying to get me to that lower weight that it thinks my body should be. Now, again, I disagree. I kind of like the way I looked like this, but my body, when I was first doing keto, was still on a losing trajectory. I was still losing weight, and I decided to stop losing weight. So the second mistake that I think I found is that I started all of this with these macro numbers with me doing 20 grams of carbs per day. And although 20 grams of carbs doesn't work out to a lot of calories, it's still a lot of food. It's a lot of intake that my body is doing, and it's enough carbohydrate that my body would have to deal with those carbs. Now that I'm not eating those carbohydrates, and I'm not taking in that much food, then my body actually has a little bit more space to take in more food, which would mean taking in better quality energy. I think the mistake that I made was I never readjusted the food I was eating when I took more carbohydrates off my plate. And so I'm eating to satiation or slightly full when I could probably be eating to a bit more full than I was, giving my body more healthy fats, which again are going to help to build me. I think that my body is still doing cleanup and it's still trying to get to the best version of me. And so my weight was coming down because I think that I increased my metabolism by giving my body more clean energy. And why did that happen in a week? I don't know. But I find it interesting that even till today, I haven't gained any weight. So I'm still at that healthy weight that I came back from vacation. I think this is less about the energy intake and more about the amino acids and healthy fats that I've allowed into my body that's allowing my body to kickstart cleanup, rebuilding, like doing all these healthy things that's then giving me energy and allowing like a lot of processes that when they start working well together, again, my body is trying to get me to that healthier weight. And honestly, I will say that this time around, I don't feel like my face looks sick and I feel like my skin is getting tighter. I feel okay at this 5 pounds less compared to 5 years ago when I got close to this, well, when I got 5 pounds less than this number and I was freaking out because I didn't like how I looked. By adding eggs, which both Dr. Ekberg and Dr. Berg keep telling us are so healthy for us to eat, I've allowed my body to tap into what it was already trying to do and start healing itself a bit more intensely, I think. It's rebuilding me. It's energizing me. I feel nothing but good. How do I want to proceed? I'm not sure this experiment is over because I'm still feeling amazing. So I'm going to keep going. The 4 eggs extra every day will continue. In my mind, I'm thinking for 6 months. I want to get to the 6-month mark and see what is happening. What happened to my weight? What happened to my skin? Am I still feeling amazing? Did I end up putting on weight? We're going to keep pushing forward Wellness Warrior because I think that I'm learning from the conversations I have with you guys. So Lee and Rose, I appreciate you and I thank you for putting this information in front of me. I'm learning that maybe I just wasn't eating enough and that's why I was still a little tired. And maybe that's why my skin didn't tighten back up as much as I wanted it to. What will happen to my midsection? If I keep doing this, will my tummy flatten to the place where I want it to be flattened? So much for us to find out. So as I learn more, I'm going to let you guys in on whatever I learn. But what I can say is to this point, did I gain around the midsection? Nope. Everything has stayed stable, even though I'm eating more. And well, that's saying to me that maybe I need to keep moving forward on this and see what happens. At this moment in time, my mind, I'm keeping it at 4 eggs. I don't think I'm going to add more because it's still quite a bit of food to get through. But if anything changes, I'm going to let you know. And we're going to have a follow-up video when I complete my 6 months. So looking forward to having a chat with you and letting you know whatever I figure out. But I hope this video has helped you. If there's anything that I said that you found interesting or you want a challenge or you want more, put it in the comments below. I'm curious to know what you guys think about what I'm doing. And I'm looking forward to sharing more with you. And I know going on vacation or having parties and events coming up, can be really scary because we're worried we're going to overeat. So if you want to know how I prepare for my vacations, there's a video on the screen right there that you can click into. Click on the link and I'll meet you over there.